Like to welcome you all to another episode of the Dharma Warrior podcast. I'm delighted to be here again with my good friend, Dr. Christie Smirl, or Kalavati Devi. And how are you doing today, Christie?
Very good. Good to see you again. Thank you for having me on.
It's my pleasure as always. So today we are going to be discussing Christie's latest essay in the Yoga Life Transformation Beyond Fitness series, which we posted recently, which was called Unlocking Higher Life Potentials. And that was sort of a collection of excerpts and just a little essay that Christie prepared recently for the blog. And so we just wanted to get together and talk about that and talk about her, some of her recent endeavors and check in for you also. So yeah, what's new and exciting with you, Christy?
I've been working on a lot of projects lately. And recently I finished up my yoga teacher training online program because we know that a lot of places are closed down. So I've been putting together different programs, whether they want to do full yoga teacher training to become a teacher, or if they just want to do like a 50-hour professional supplemental certification. So I've been working on that a lot and just getting ready for a nice spring season to come upon us.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember now that you mention it, seeing that you had recently posted a list of a sort of updated list of the courses that you're offering on healthiervibrations.com. And yeah, I've been doing a 200-hour yoga teacher training myself since January, and that has been really transformational and quite lovely for me. I'm doing it through a place called Therapeutic Approach Yoga Studio here in Halifax. And yeah, I guess on that note, if any of my friends in Halifax ever want to come to a yoga class, I have a lot of free passes for classes, and yeah, in these times, it is nice to have somewhere to get out and go to, right? Like I've been doing a lot of the classes online via Zoom because we're only allowed to have 10 people in the studio at a time. And sorry, the little dog came in here and tried to snatch my oatmeal cookie. Do you want to come say hi, Fox? Oh, he's gone now. Anyway, yeah. So if any of my friends in Halifax ever want to join me, I my evenings tend to be fairly free for yoga classes. But anyway, yeah. So today we just wanted to get together and talk about the Unlocking Higher Life Potentials essay that Christy prepared for the blog, and I also just wanted to mention a few other things that I've sort of detected that are going on in the world of Dr. Christie Smirl and Healthier Vibrations. And so there is a contest going on through a website called Yoga Warrior. It's the I Am Yoga Warrior I Am Yoga Warrior contest, and Christy is currently has been sort of bouncing back and forth between first and second place. I believe she's currently in second place, and we're entering sort of the final stages of the contest, which finishes up around the end of April, I believe. And the winner will have a 2-page spread in Yoga Journal magazine at yogajournal.com, and will be the lucky winner of $10,000. So I wish you all the best in that. And I've been sharing links for people to vote for Christy. You can vote daily. Super easy to do. Two clicks, and um, so yeah, so that is a great thing. And then also, I noticed that you have been putting some of your devotional artwork on onto some t-shirts and hoodies and tank tops and mugs and things like that. And you have a new merch and apparel section on the website too, so people can check that out. Um, yeah, was there anything else you wanted to talk about along those lines before we move on to our main subject?
No, but thank you for the shout out. It would be wonderful to win that contest. To do an article on the medical standpoint of yoga, rather than, popular culture, and try to bring a different vision of how I see yoga and why it's been incorporated into my life and into my patients' lives. So thank you for that.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think that you have something unique and powerful to offer in that way. In that you are, providing content regularly that is really useful and really coming from a place of being well informed and able to take what you've learned and give that to people in a way that they can take it and run with it in their own life. And you've found you have a way of delivering your teachings that is very easy to digest, I find, and you're coming from a very down to earth uh, place, and you can sense that, and you're there's a real human behind those eyes or whatever, and it comes
Thank you.
across. And so, and I think people pick up on that. And yeah, I think that I wish you all the best
Thank you.
that whole endeavor. But so yeah, I guess today we're mainly going to be discussing the essay Unlocking Higher Life Potentials, and that is sort of a series of excerpts, as I was saying, from Christie's recent book, which is Chakra Alignment, a transformational guide and journal to reclaim control over your chakras and life, which I have recently acquired as I attended a 4-week workshop that Christie did on the same subject, which streamed live via it was streamed live, but then people can still watch the first 3 installments of the series, and there's actually a link, or those 3 videos are embedded right at the bottom of the essay at dharmawarrior.net. So you'll find that on the blog, and there's actually a link at the bottom of the page to purchase the workbook from Amazon. So I'm just going to briefly run through kind of the contents and the flow of the book here. So it basically just starts out giving a little introduction, and then basically it just immediately gets into sort of the dynamics of the entire chakra system and how it affects human health, and the nature of the subtle body or the energetic body, and gets into the prana and the nadis and how energy flows through the nadis in the body, and then sort of gets into the specific chakras. And I really do love how you've laid out this book. It's very simple, approachable, and digestible. It takes a difficult and often confused subject and makes it quite straightforward, really. And it makes it practical and usable. So when you look at it here, it's beautiful. First of all, each section is colored according to the associated color for each chakra, and has lots of useful information on traditional associations and medical associations, Ayurvedic associations to each chakra, and which organs and systems in the body each chakra can affect, and different postures and different treatments to dealing with blockages and things related to each chakra, and gemstones and aromatherapy and music therapy, and all kinds of useful information. And then each section also has a little bit for notes on each chakra. And yeah, is there anything that you would like to add to that? I
Oh,
personally found it a very useful tool, and I think that the other people who attended your class also would have agreed, and that I think everyone really got a lot out of that entire workshop.
yeah, well, thank you very much. When I sat down to write the book, I thought, there's a lot of different books about chakras out there, and there's tons of information and resources. And the way I wanted to design it was so that people could sit down and immediately begin to digest the information, to make it immediately accessible to, let's say even a 15-year-old who really wants to reclaim control over their body, mind, and their subtle system. And I didn't want the book to be so complicated that they had to sit down and read for hours and hours and hours. What I really wanted it to do was to be a direct access so that people could immediately start working with themselves on this process. In one of the classes, I talked about the 3S system, which, is just a acronym that I came up with. It's not a theoretical system, but the first thing is to have self-study. And I wanted the pages to be pretty simple, straightforward, so that there's journaling involved and actual self-study that occurred. And then for them to begin setting sankalpas, or, a simpler term for that is an intention. How do they really want to transform themselves? And then for them to do the sadhana, which is the practice of it. Because what I find too commonly, whether it be in yoga teacher training, or any other type of esoteric studies, is that people, they read the book, or they collect the book, don't even read the book, or they skim through the book, but they don't do the work that is involved. Many people do, but be not just a book, but a tool, a workbook, a straightforward system that people could start from square one, not knowing anything about the subtle body, and easily navigate their way through simplistic yet effective ways to change their life and transform. Because, I remember when I've said this before, when I was studying medicine, I went all the way through medical training, and here I'm working in an emergency department, and I'd never heard the word chakra. I didn't know that we had a subtle body. The first time I thought that people were just making this up, it was some new age garbage. And then when I really started studying the science, I realized this is old school. This has been known by the ancient rishis and the sages and wise people from thousands of years ago. It's not something that is, brand new in the yoga community. And so I wanted it to be easily digestible for people so that they could start working immediately and understand the correlation between the physical body, the brain, and the subtle body. Because I think that a lot of times people don't understand that their physical disorders, their pains, their physical issues with their body have a complementary component of the mind causing pranic field alterations. I often teach Reiki year round, and it's a form of conscious healing. But really the fundamental information in level 1 Reiki training is the chakra system and how to utilize it. And I make all the first year students go through a minimum of a 21-day meditational process where they go through and they study each one of their subtle body layers and chakras and start rectifying it. Because, people, they just want to become healers, but they haven't done the work themselves. And we always have more work to do. There's always more layers to be revealed. But I think that the way that I put the book together, I wanted people to have an immediate tool to use rather than just a book and theory. I wanted it to be a practice.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and I guess it's kind of funny that we've never gotten on the subject of Reiki. I Yeah, I guess I became a master and teacher of Reiki in 2008 and 2009. And at the time, when I did my level 1 in 2006 or 7, like, I guess I'm trying to find a way to say that there are a lot of people out there teaching Reiki that are just sort of passing around certificates, and there's not really a whole lot of a whole lot behind it or whatever, right? Or
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I know a lot of people who have studied Reiki, and really it was a crackerjack certificate. And I often make the analogy of trying to say that you're a black belt in some type of martial arts after a couple weekends. It's just trash. And for people to understand what Reiki is, they have to understand what their subtle body is. And they have to understand how to begin rectifying where the patterns of abnormality have originated from and how to correct them within themselves before they can really start working with other people. And I studied Usui Reiki, and Dr. Usui, he wanted to explain how Jesus was a healer. And so he went on a long quest and found a way of presenting the information so that people could utilize it rather than it just being a natural skill. How can we teach this and transfer it down through written information or through oral information? And I think that it's a very important process that when people are learning how to deal with prana, whether it's themselves or other people, that they have a deep understanding. And that actually is one of the reasons why I wrote the book, so that each of the students that take Reiki 1 with me, they have to digest this entire book and they have to go through the entire book rather than just a, real quick weekend type of thing. But one of the important things is for people to understand this complex system rather than it just being kind of a popularity certification collection, which unfortunately the lineage or the practice of Reiki has been dramatically and pathetically diluted. I'll leave it there.
Right, yeah. And I was taught in the Usui Reiki tradition as well. And I started putting together a booklet for two of my students. Like I became a master and teacher in 2009, and I've given that initiation to three people since then. Two of them recently, who are my very dear friends and who sort of encouraged me to make a simplified version of the Usui Reiki tradition because it has just been sort of bastardized, pardon my French, to such a level that you can't really find the traditional teachings anymore, right? Like, you know, I believe it was, her name was Hawayo Takata, who is like credited with bringing the tradition to the West, and she initiated, I believe, about 20 people, and from there the tree just goes wow, like it's just, and there's no real accountability for someone to say like, okay, I have taken this certification and now I've added just whatever I want to the tradition willy-nilly and kind of incorporated all of these things. And yeah, it's interesting, but from my experience of the teachings, it was an incredibly transformative thing for me. And when I worked with a friend who was a master and teacher that just kept saying, you have to let me teach you Reiki. You have to let me teach you Reiki. You have to let me teach you Reiki. I was like, okay. And eventually, I was very skeptical of it, honestly. And then when I did the level 1 with him, I went home feeling like I had balls of fire in my hands. And I just went home incredibly energized. I was like, oh my Lord, I've never had such a physical, energetic experience like that. And it really, it didn't totally shake my worldview. Like I believed in those things, but I just never experienced it in such a physical way. And I was charged up for a good few days after that. It was interesting, like to see it just sort of opened uh, different sort of way of seeing the world for me,
Uh, I think that's very important that, when people start learning about and studying chakras or just a subtle body in and of itself, they start getting a new understanding of how their system actually works, that they're a lot more than just a brain and a body. And that is a critical thing for people to understand, is that there's so much more than what they're taught in school, in PE, or even in medical school, that there's a whole other underlying system that needs to be worked with, cultivated, continually kept up, and that it's a system of hygiene, actually, that I often describe. Let's say I fall down in the mud right now and I stand up and I'm covered in mud, right? I say, oh, I'm dirty with mud, so I go take a shower and now I'm clean, right? Maybe I still need to clean under my fingernails, etc. And then I notice, oh my gosh, I skinned my knee and it's bleeding. Well, that might take a couple days, maybe even a couple weeks to heal up. Then there might be the emotional impact of falling in the mud. Let's say it was a social event and you're terribly embarrassed or something, and that might take a couple weeks to overcome the emotional embarrassment. But what people don't understand is when there's significant trauma, or when there is systematic, insidious programming of the human mind, that it affects the way the entire subtle body is operating. And it's one of my chief goals is to help people first recognize where that programming has come from, whether it be from their family unit, their school, their governmental system, their personal beliefs, or their past, or maybe even ancestral, that they begin to deprogram that so that they can, we often talk about being enlightened, right? Like, what does that mean, being enlightened? People think, oh, I'm going to suddenly, glow or something, but really what it is it's a stepwise process of eradicating the complications of the modern world, and the complications or the vitiations, the disturbances of conditioning and experiences. Because when we are functioning from the human mind, only the human mind, the ego, the I'm only Christie Smirl mode of thinking, we are not connecting to our infinite source, our Godhead, or our, bliss, because we're still caught up with all of the conditionings that have been placed against us, or that we have just adapted as conditioning. And my guru, I'll paraphrase her a bit, Adi Shakti Ma. If we think about our soul, our true self with a capital S, as unadulterated, beautiful bliss energy, like a mirror, right? Or a window. Life's experiences are like smears and layers that block out the radiation of that pure bliss self, or that pure soul, because we end up hiding behind or behaving in a certain way due to our conditioning. And so when we work with the subtle body, one thing that I really emphasize is to begin to decondition yourself from the vitiations or the mental disturbances. And for some people, they never even get to that point. Just like in yoga, we talk about starting with the yamas and the niyamas. And then we talk about working with the body. Then we move into working with the breath, connecting in the mind and all the different panchakoshas. And it really doesn't have to be so complicated. People just need to learn how to deprogram themselves from these looping patterns that limit their self, capital S, or soul, from radiating through without complications.
And in that way, I guess, yeah, it's important for people to understand that we take control of our physical health through the way that we respond to the world, and our habits of thinking, and our start to form, or they're very much related to what's going on a more subtle energetic level, and these feelings and sort of past experiences and things that are maybe not being addressed, that keep coming out as seemed habits or dysfunctions in the body and mind, that are sort of coming from a deeper, more energetic source of disturbance or imbalance.
Yeah, it's very important for people to realize that. I've had people come to me before, and I don't typically talk about this type of stuff in a recorded online session, but I'll just bring up an example because this example is pretty palpable and understandable. So I had a gentleman come and see me for a private Reiki session, which I'm currently not doing any private Reiki sessions, so don't contact me for it. Anyways, so he comes to my house and he has, a physical disorder, and he wanted to work a little bit on some of his back pain as a result from his limping, right? And I thought, okay, that's not a problem. And, I was going to help him look at some Ayurvedic alternatives as well. So when I was evaluating him energetically, one thing that I kept coming across was the impression of him being slapped against the head over and over and over. And I thought, sometimes I don't mention what comes through the psychic channels, but his was so strong that I felt it was necessary to bring up. So after the session, I said, okay, you might want to do some hot oil to your back, et cetera, et cetera. You do have, abnormal hip alignment and whatnot. I said, but what I found interesting during the evaluation is that there's a lot of energetic signals coming through of you being slapped against the head over and over and over. And he said, wow, like that was my childhood. But I've already dealt with it emotionally. I've already had counseling and I've forgiven. And I said, you may want to take a look at ways of healing the subtle body layers, because if it's still detectable through me, who's basically a virtual stranger to him, it's still affecting you in some level. So, just like the example of falling in the mud, we could take a shower and wash ourselves off. Just like we have a cut, we can mend our tissue. If somebody breaks their bones, I can set their bones and put them in a cast. If somebody has an emotional disturbance, they go through counseling, they get it out, they process it, they digest it. But we also have to realize that we have to digest things from the subtle body layer also. Like in Ayurveda, we understand that there's digestive power, or Agni, in the gut. We understand that there's digestive power, or Agni, in the tissues, the dhatus. We also understand that there is a type of Agni that purifies our mental channels. But there's also the subtle body to take a look at. We've been kind of led to believe that we're just a body, a mind, and somehow we have some sort of spirit. But what type of hygiene are we taught? In school they teach you how to wipe your bottom, right? They teach you how to brush your teeth when you're growing up. They teach you how to brush your hair. They teach you how to brush off, life disturbances. They don't teach you anything about energy hygiene. And that's one thing that I've really been heavily focusing on in the last few years, is making this information available to just the layperson. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this stuff out or to even do it. It just takes the willingness, the self-study, setting the intention, and doing the work.
Mm-hmm. And so, Yeah, for different people, they can sort of be coming at this subject from a lot of different places, right? Like a lot of people would maybe want to be getting into working with the chakras just to advance their personal practice, whereas other people would maybe be coming at it with like some specific disturbance or needing help in some for some specific medical problem or something to that effect. But in general, for someone who is unfamiliar with all of this, uh, with chakras and the energetic body and energetic healing and all of these sort of things, where do you think is a good place to begin for someone who's coming at it uh, totally cold? Yeah.
The first thing that I usually teach people is that we've known for a long time. We're not talking 50 years or even a couple hundred years. We've known for a lot longer through Ayurveda and through the sciences and arts of all sorts of different cultures across the world that we have a subtle body. So many people understand that we have what are called nadis, Nadi, and they are channels in which prana comes through the body. And there's 72,000 nadis in the individual human body. And what is it? It flows prana. Well, first of all, I ask people, like, what on earth is prana? I didn't learn about prana in medical school. Does that mean I'm breathing? Yeah, it's a lot more than that. We understand that the prana in our body is chi, or life force. It's not just breath, it goes deeper into vital life force. And we understand that this prana, or this chi, flows through our body, through these nadis, and then it begins to intersect and coalesce into different shapes, not shapes, but different vortices of energy. And so most people understand that we have, of those 72,000 nadis, we have three really primary channels that flow the prana through our subtle body. Now, if we dissect a human body, we're not going to find these nadis. They're subtle channels. In Ayurveda, they know that there are gross channels and there are minute, invisible channels. So when we look at the human body, we have three main channels that flow chi, or prana. We've got the Ida and the Pingala and the Sushumna. So the Ida and the Pingala are the ones to the right and the left, and they crisscross the main axis of the human subtle body. And the main axis is the Sushumna. And that Sushumna channel, some people call it the soul channel, or the main spiritual channel. This is one of the reasons why we sit up tall and erect while we're doing meditational practices, because we're wanting to maximize the flow of prana and vitality flowing through our body. Now, when we take a look at the intersection points of where the Ida and the Pingala flow up across the Sushumna, it looks just like the medical Caduceus sign. But isn't it strange that we don't learn about any of this in medical school? Mm-hmm. So when we take a look at this, each of the major intersecting points, it creates a conglomeration of where the prana is flowing. And each of those major intersections or conglomerations is called a chakra. Now, there's plenty more than 7 chakras in the body, and there are even chakras that don't reside within the physical body. But okay, big deal. We've got some chakras. What are we talking about here? But we understand that prana is our life force. No prana, no life. And so we want to have ideally flowing prana. Like you go to the doctor, right? And they take your blood pressure. They say, okay, your blood's flowing good. And then they take a urine sample. Okay, your kidneys are flowing good. And they, take a look at your digestive system. Okay, your digestive system's flowing good. Okay, you're able to answer some basic mental things. Your mental faculties are flowing good, but nobody looks at the subtle body. Nobody takes out the subtle body trash. And I find it very important whether people are looking to maximize their self, capital S, self-actualization. Really, that's the goal of most meditation and most yoga and Reiki and working with the subtle body. You know, why are we here? Why were we born? We have certain gifts to give, to offer. But the first thing that we have to do is come into higher stages of self-actualization so that we can even figure out why it is that we're here. So when we have emotional disturbances or conditionings that have happened, so you don't have to have trauma to work with the chakras, but there are many emotions that are common to individual and the collective. Things like fear, things like shame, guilt, grief, communication, wisdom, and insight. And we understand that we have a kind of like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you take a look at the world around us, or the world in which you were raised in, fear, fear mongering, fear is an enormously debilitating or conditioning emotion. And when somebody is constantly operating out of fear, whether it be acute or minor or low grade, chronic low grade fear. I mean, if you watch the news every day, you're probably operating out of chronic fear of some habituated sort, unless you've learned to recognize it. How does that affect the physical body? It absolutely affects the physical body. It affects the cardiovascular system. We already know that. It affects the musculoskeletal system. Most people are aware of that. But it affects the way that the subtle body is functioning. And the way the subtle body is functioning will determine the quality and quantity of prana, life force available to you. That's like one of the main reasons that we do meditation is to come into this still point where we no longer have our mind racing outside of us, where we go through the process of pratyahara and we move inward. We begin to still ourselves. Still ourselves of what? All the external vitiations and internal vitiations, to go back into ourselves like a turtle and come back into contact with our self, capital S, not what the world outside is dishing out or trying to tell us that we are, or that we are, reactively creating this altered state of existence that is not truth. It's Maya. It's illusion. So I think I went a little off track there, but anyways.
No, not at all.
When I take a look at, talking about chakras, sometimes I even have conversations with young teenagers about chakras. And I'll say, look, if you're walking around and your whole body is vibrating fear, the whole world is going to react differently to you. People will react differently to you. Animals will act differently towards you. If you're walking around the world in a state of shame or guilt or grief, we have to deal with these things because they are markers or vitiations, smears across, layers across our mirror or our window to our soul. And it's very important for people to realize that they can really approach these through a really practical standpoint. It doesn't have to be, really fancy foo-foo la-la. It's just about studying yourself. Where have these patterns developed? Where did they begin? How can I begin getting rid of them so that I can become a pure emanation of my soul or self, capital S, rather than a twisted up, kind of complicated energetic mess.
Mm. And so, um, I guess in that way, our emotions can really be a very powerful tool to guide us towards what is good for us and what is not.
Well,
Go ahead.
that's a tricky question because sometimes it is our emotions that drive us right off the road into the ditch, and it's more important to recognize where the emotional patterns stem from, what they're causing us to do or not to do, and to, as often as possible, operate from the unity of soul versus operating out of a reactionary system based off of past conditioning, which most of us do. But
Mhm.
some of us do it to differing degrees. I went through, I think it was about 5 years of intensive post-traumatic stress disorder decompression therapy. And one of the things that was very important is to recognize, where did that base emotion come from? Because what is an emotion? An emotion is a vibration. If an emotion is a vibration, really, what are you? You're just a big vibrating mass of molecules, right? That's all you are
Mhm.
for your physical body. You're a vibrating mass of molecules. But your subtle body determines how things vibrate based off of what you are feeling and or thinking in many cases. So it's important to be able to harness, correct, cultivate emotions that are not disturbing the flow of prana through the body. There's, I remember studying and discovering what are called the granthis. And I was like, wow, I've never even heard of granthis. And there are these blockages within the main Sushumna channel. And we talked about the Sushumna being the larger spiritual channel, the center channel. And in order for us to have that divine connection with our soul or our self, we need to eradicate as much blockage as possible through that central channel. And there's 3 areas that are called granthis that we want to work on. But sometimes it's easier for people to work with the individual chakras. What am I afraid of? Where did that come from? How can I eradicate that? What do I have as far as grief goes? How can I work with that? How can I eradicate that? What can I do to become non hijacked from my emotions? What can I do to decondition myself from these habitual emotions? How can I respond to life rather than reacting to life? So, that's not always easier said than done, but it's definitely something that people can approach from a simplistic way. One of the reasons why I wrote the book is for my medical colleagues to be able to sit down and say, oh, okay, we can start addressing this with our patients, for psychological professionals, even to look at the emotional, mental, physical axis from a different standpoint.
Mm. And yeah, so that was you just triggered my memory to something I was going to mention earlier when we were talking about Reiki and energetic healing. Is that I think it is something that is starting to be recognized by the greater scientific community and medical community over the last few years. And there was a time I was lent a book called Hands of Light by Barbara Ann Brennan. I'm not sure if you're
I like
familiar
that
with.
book. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so for anyone who's not familiar, Barbara Ann Brennan worked for I believe it was the CIA for 25 years as studying electromagnetic energy in biological organisms, I believe is was her main study. And so after, yeah, a certain amount of time, she decided that in order to be able to actually help people using this information, that she had to leave working for the government because there was just too much difficulty. And they, from my understanding, is that they basically owned like the copyright to her work and her research in a lot of ways. And anyway, but I spoke to I was reading this book outside of the cafe that I worked at. It was, yeah, say like 2006 or 7, and a lady walked by and she said, "Oh, like I'm a nurse. Like I was recommended that book and got it because they were teaching Reiki to like all of the nurses in her ward or kind of thing." I was like, "Oh wow, that's kind of amazing to hear that they're." She said that they were encouraging nurses to take healing hands kind of courses and stuff like that
Yeah.
at this
Yeah,
point.
you know, it is very important. In other countries like France, Reiki's covered by medical insurance.
Mhm.
Over here, it's been so diluted that either you encounter people who are legitimately able to be of assistance through that methodology, or it just becomes diluted like snake oil. Um, So it is very important for people to understand that it can have its therapeutic medical practices or applications. Many years ago, when I was working at St. Bernardine's Hospital in the local area, they took about a year, but they finally approved for me to do Reiki in the oncology department. So I was doing that on a volunteer basis, and it was extremely helpful. But even just being able to be witnessed and to be understood by another individual can be beneficial. But when learned correctly, I believe that the chakras should be utilized for self-healing first. And then when people feel that they're wanting to progress forward with it, they need to have a firm grasp of what they're doing first. Then people should, if they're interested, look into Reiki. And there's a lot of other different types of conscious healing practices. We don't have to just call it Reiki. All sorts of different cultures from across the globe have different forms of it. And to be truthful, not everybody has the same abilities because they haven't done the same amount of work on themselves. And it does require self-work and self-discipline to cultivate that type of pranic exchange between you and another individual. Um, but it's like I describe in the different levels of Reiki or the different studies, that some people have a little bit of prana that they can work with, and some people are like high voltage lines. It just depends on the individual, depends on their training, depends on their background, depends on their self-work as well. I've known people who are actually very good at it who slid because they were not maintaining themselves. And that's one thing that we teach in classes, the responsibilities of working with other people's energy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess in that way, like we're sort of using different languages to talk about the same thing when we're speaking about, like using Reiki or using Kundalini yoga or using a different sort of healing method. There's only one reality and there's only one body for each person, right? Like, and there's different ways that we can break that down and spell it out and analyze it. But basically, what it boils down to is learning to quiet the mind and go inward and to address the things that trouble you when you close your eyes and you try to meditate. If you keep seeing your friend Sally betraying you over and over and over again, it's like, oh, I need to rectify that, right? And
Yeah,
so
and that's really important for people to realize, because that's just temporary.
mm,
It's not eternal. The soul is eternal. And if we're constantly caught up with the but that, but this, because of that, because of this, and all of the things that disturb us mentally, we're not dealing with the eternal, and the soul is not radiating through at the degree that it can. And really, what makes somebody a healed individual or a healing individual? It depends on how much of the soul is radiating through without the disturbance of the mental conditioning.
And that's sort of what I was about to get to, is that the difference in between what would make or that basically we're talking about what blocks the Sushumna Nadi, and how can we start to clear it. And like, so from my understanding, the Ida and Pingala are the sort of feminine and masculine energies in the body, or the passive and active energies, and the Sushumna Nadi is like the central channel through which they move, and each of the intersections, what we call one of the 7 major chakras, there's the potential for the energy to flow freely or for it to be blocked by certain things. And this will start affecting those certain energies, or I meant to say those certain organs and systems in those areas. Or we've sort of discovered that the 7 chakras roughly line up with the 7 endocrine glands that exist along the spine, and things of the like. So I guess one of the major things that we're sort of getting at here is that we can begin to think and feel and live in a way that we are not blocking up our subtle energetic pathways by living in fear and doubt, and living in the past and living in false futures, rather than just living in the now, and things of the like. And then from there's a plethora of other ways that we can torture our mind and our body into disease, I guess, is what I'm getting at, right? And
Yeah.
it means that on the opposite, or on the opposite side of the spectrum, what we're getting at is that there is sort of a simple way to begin breaking all of that down and taking control again of your life, and how all of this trickles down into your day-to-day experience, right?
It is. And I think it's a challenge for some people to begin opening up, or as I say, taking the pliers and unwinding the barbed wire from themselves. We sometimes become so tightly wound up in defense of the world that it really takes bravery, and it takes courage and persistence to begin not only healing the thoughts, the direction of the thoughts, but then to slowly create a healing mechanism for the subtle body. And, to truly say that we treat the body, the mind, and the spirit or soul is really flimsy in most medical models. And, I practiced medicine for so long, and I really never had the opportunity to truly sit down and start working with people from a soul level, or to really start bringing in the knowledge of yoga, the science of yoga, to be able to make somebody quote unquote whole again, or unobscured again. And I just don't think that there's a place in medicine for that to occur, because of the model that is set up with the insurance companies and the rat race, the in, the out. I've said before, sometimes in a 12-hour shift, you can see up to 100 patients, and there's no time for individual personal counseling there. But even if you go, let's say, you have work to do, so you go see a counselor, you go see a therapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist. There's a degree of counseling, but even those medical professionals are approaching it more from a diagnostic standpoint rather than a soul standpoint, to cure or to eradicate the dis-ease in the body, the dis-ease in the mind, so that there's much less disturbance for the soul, the eternal bliss body, to flow forward into this environment. It's, yeah. It's kind of like one of those things people have to pursue on their own. It's one of the reasons why I put together different programs for people, because it's going to take a highly motivated person to really dig down into some of this, even to, purchase a book and then read through the book and then actually do the work, do the journaling, do the sankalpa, set the intention, do the sadhana, do the practice. And, unfortunately, and I've mentioned this before, that people are looking for quick fixes, just take a pill, just, put a brace on it, just give me a prescription and here, pound, I'm done, I'm done. Because they want to avoid, not everybody, but many people want to avoid the discomfort of the unfurling of the conditioning that needs to occur. And then you take away some of the conditioning, they don't know who they are anymore. And it causes fear. So they turtle back up into the previous condition that they were in. It's more comfortable. It'd be like if I told you that you've lived in a box all of your life, and then I came and I picked you up out of the box and I stomped on your box and I set you down. You'd be like, oh my gosh. It's like my chihuahuas. I have 2 little chihuahuas. And sometimes the back gate, if it's open, they won't leave. They will not leave the backyard. They will stand outside like, oh my gosh, it's a huge world out there. They're not brave enough to run out into the neighborhood. They want to stay in their comfortable box that's been created for them because they don't know what's out there. And a lot of people are afraid to take away their conditioned emotions, conditioned thinking of what they have come to believe is reality, because they don't want to get out of that box because they don't know what's outside. So they'd rather just stay blocked up.
Right. And so I'm just trying to wrap my head here around or I'm thinking about the difference in between the way that the medical system perceives these problems and interprets them just in an entirely sort of physical way versus how we can start to maybe encourage the world to start looking a little deeper and seeing if there's something more subtle going on energetically. Like when a person comes into, say, a clinic and they're obviously I'm not talking about if someone comes in and they cut their foot or something, but if someone's undergoing like chronic stress or chronic fatigue or something like that, where or digestive issues, or say something that might seem entirely physical, but and then the answer in my mind may not be just to give someone a pill and send them off like, oh, here's the prescription, just take these when you like feel anxious or stressed or whatever, but then you're just fighting the surface level of the problem. You're not dealing with the source of where the problems are welling up from.
This is a very, very important point. The current medical model addresses a human being as a biochemical individual. Everything is addressed from a biochemical standpoint. And if it's a biochemical standpoint, there's always some type of chemical to treat it, correct? If there's an imbalance, what do? We give a prescription. We give a chemical to correct it. We don't go to the root cause of it. That's Ayurveda. Ayurveda will get down to the root cause of it, or even yoga often gets to the root cause of it. But we need to understand that we're not only biochemical, we are bioenergetic beings. That's what we're missing, the subtle body, the energetics of the body. You know, friend and colleague of mine, Craig Williams, and I did a couple series last year, the year before, healing the mind and healing the digestion. And much of the information goes into how the mind, how the emotions are causing the underlying problems, and how yogic sciences, Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, you know, traditional Chinese medicine understands that we are bioenergetic. They have all the detailed information about meridians and, you know, acupuncture points. Like, you know, if our method of medicine became more integrated to understand and truly train our medical professionals to treat and give them the space and resources to treat from a biomedical, biochemical, bioenergetic methodology, the population would be completely different. But you know what? If you heal a person, they're no longer a paying client. So, you know, that's one thing I loved about Ayurveda is they said that, you know, your goal is to make the person self-sufficient, that you want your patients to go away. You don't want them to be dependent on you. And part of the problem with, you know, bioenergetics is that we have mystified it so much. It needs to be decoded for the common person to understand. How can they do this for themselves? Maybe with a little assistance and a little guidance, a little mentorship. But even in medicine, regular biochemical medicine, it's been mystified. Why do so many people just rely on what they're told from their medical provider? Because they don't know any better. It's the words are too big. The chemical names are too big. They can't even pronounce what condition they have. They can't even pronounce what medication they're taking. It's so shrouded in mystery. And, you know, that was one of the reasons why I wanted this chakra alignment book to just be straightforward. No mystery about it. Just look, here's your nitty gritty. Start your work.
But at the same time, there is lots of valuable information there for even for people who are advanced in the subject, right? Like, and it does have a variety of information, as I was saying earlier, from a traditional standpoint, or from medical information to Ayurveda to other information from other cultures and other traditions and things that relate on different levels. And so, yeah. From here, I guess, are there any other sort of major aspects to the subject that you wanted to cover? I feel like we've given a good sort of basis on the subject and where people can start to approach it and everything. And I really would honestly recommend that anyone who it wants to start working with the subject to check out Christie's book on chakra alignment. I'm not just trying to be that person selling the snake oil or whatever right now, you know, but like, but I really did find that the layout of it and the intention behind it and just the material that's presented, it's in a format that can be very useful to people, and it's affordable and accessible. And there are a lot of books on the subject out there on chakras and different systems and things of the like. And it, yeah, I just think that it is a good place for people to begin sort of tackling the subject and applying it to their own life and their own practice. And I think that your history in the medical world and your that it really does provide a lot in your disseminating the information, right? Because a lot of people are really just sort of there's a lot of sort of hodgepodged information out there about the chakras, and you'll see like things just like copy pasted together time and time again, and the same old kind of crap rehashed, honestly. And a lot of confused and strange sort of things that people will try to associate to the whole process, and to the whole system of the energetic body,
Yeah,
and so it's good to see a digestible and accessible workbook on the subject.
thank you. Yeah,
Uh,
I recommend that if people want to start working with their energetic body, they can get the book. I have some videos out that are available on YouTube, or people can go to healthiervibrations.com, my website, and they can click the chakra room. And I've got some, basic information there. But if people are kind of tentative or not sure how to get started, they can always book a private consultation with me, and I can help give them mentorship, how to work with their subtle body, where to begin, and start integrating in information about how nutrition affects our subtle body, how what we drink affects our subtle body, what we think affects our subtle body. And many times what people need is they need mentorship. They need some assistance. And this goes beyond Reiki or Reiki certification. It's just helping people help themselves and digest what needs to be eradicated from their system so that they can become whole in body, mind, and soul, rather than a fragment of what they are capable of being.
Right, and that's just it. And once, from my experience, once people start to find a way of integrating their body and mind and soul, you start to see how they're all interrelated and how they can all start to work together or work against one another. And so, yeah, it's really good to have you here and talk about all of these things again. And
Thank you for having me.
yeah, I'm just having a quick look here to make sure that I covered all of the subjects that I wanted to cover and everything. And obviously, there's always next time. But yeah, so I guess in closing here, I just want to thank everybody for joining us, and remind everybody again to go vote for my friend Christie here. I'm hoping. If,
I'll put a vote link on the webpage today. It'll be up there. What month are we in? Right? What year are we in? We're in March of 2021.
that's
Yeah.
correct.
So I'll put a link on the Healthier Vibrations page. If people want to put their free vote in, that'd be great. I'd love to be able to do a 2-page spread in one of the biggest yoga journals in the world, and
I
kind
would
of
love that.
give a different presentation.
I would love for you to have the opportunity to do that as well, because I think a lot of people could benefit from it, right? Like I think I personally can't think of another person that is on your level as far as what you have to offer the world in.
Oh, thanks.
In
There's so many experts out there, but
It's true, but you are
I,
coming at things from a different perspective where you have so much experience in traditional Western medicine, and your experience in the clinic and working as a nurse practitioner, and then also you from on the other hand, you are coming at this from a place of having a very serious spiritual devotional practice, and so I do feel like that you have something special to offer the world there, and I wish you all the best in the contest. So I'll post a link to
thank
that
you.
on the Dharma Warrior blog as well. And yeah, I look forward to meeting with you again soon. And yes, I just encourage everybody to like and follow our channels here, and you can find Christie at healthiervibrations.com, or find her just as Dr. Christie Smirl or Christie Smirl on Instagram or Facebook. And I will be posting links to all of this for you all tonight. And I look forward to seeing you all again for the next installment of Yoga Life Transformation Beyond Fitness with my good friend Christy Smirl here. So thank you all for joining us today, and I look forward to the next installment.
All right. Thank you very much. Take
Thank
care.
you. You too. Namaste.
Namaste.